Hello and welcome back to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blaine. Thank you for joining us today. We've got a great show for you. During the first segment, we're talking a little bit about some of the issues going on in the annuity market out there. As you longtime listeners will know, I'm no fan or friend of the annuity business or people that sell them. And this article appeared in the Investment News, which is an industry publication talking about Prudential raising its fees. Well, by the way, so if you missed the first segment, head on over to our website, dlblaine.com, and we'll post a copy of the show there in a week or so. You can catch up with what we were talking about. Also, I apologize. I'm getting over a cold here, so if I sound kind of funny, it is me doing the show today. So we'll try to get through it here. Anyway, Prudential announced that they're raising the fees on their annuity from an already astronomical, 2 to 3%, that now approaching a total of 4% on these annuities. It's just totally out of control. When you look at the mortality expense costs, which is the insurance component of it, you look at the fees paid to the broker, you look at the fees paid to the underlying investments, you're talking about over 4%. In fact, Raymond James Financial, which is an independent broker-dealer, and a lot of their reps sell or insurance, have insurance licenses and sell annuities. Raymond James actually said that they're not going to be able to offer it because they do have a limit on the amount of fees that they will allow their reps to sell, a particular product, a limit on the amount of fees. And so they're not even going to offer this anymore. And so you've got to be cautious out there if you're looking at these annuities. If you're getting sold them by, your broker, you really need to take a look at them and understand what you're getting into. Once again, as I mentioned in the first segment, the guarantee is what hooks people. They look at this and they say, "Oh, a guaranteed stream of income I can never outlive." Well, that is somewhat true, but we've seen over the past several years, they're continually changing the rules of the game, which they're allowed to. They've raised fees, they've reduced guarantees. A lot of companies have gotten out of the business completely. And so what we saw back in the financial crisis in the housing market and some of the derivative products, we saw the insurers, AIG, which we talked about on the show, the AIG bailouts, AMBAC, and some of these other insurers that got into trouble and basically were insolvent were it not for the federal government bailing them out. The same thing with these annuity companies is the promises that they're making to people that are probably not sustainable. A lot of them are predicated on the insurance company making unrealistically high rates of return, and it's just not realistic going forward. And so you got to be careful what is guaranteed. As I mentioned, some of the same people that rail on Social Security as a empty promise and it won't be there, yet they turn around and they put their money in these annuities that are essentially making the same promise. Now, I have seen, for example, one particular person that they were fortunate enough to invest right before the market collapse of 2008, and so the insurance company, has a guarantee on the prior value. Well, there's no assurance other than written on a piece of paper that when that person goes to take that money out, that the company will be able to fulfill that promise. So we recommend, just stay away from them, especially if the fees are getting in the 2%, 3%, and as this article said, over 4% for an investment. I mean, I just don't understand how people think they're ever going to come out ahead with an annuity. And one of the little things a little test that I look at is I've seen a ton of people regret purchasing annuities. I've never seen anyone walk through my office or otherwise that wasn't promoted by the insurance company themselves that ever amassed wealth investing in annuities. And that right there should be a telltale sign for you. Okay, I thought this would be an interesting topic to cover. There's been a lot of debate recently in the media, the different political parties, about the middle class. The middle class as this nebulous group of Americans. Everybody is out for the middle class, and of course there are certain poor people, and if you talk to most poor people, they don't consider themselves poor. They say lower middle class. If you talk to most affluent people, they don't consider themselves rich, unless you're maybe Paris Hilton or something like that. They don't consider themselves rich. They say upper middle class. And so you have this middle class, in President Obama's State of the Union address, he mentioned middle class, I don't know how many times, probably exaggerating, but it seemed like hundreds of times, talking about supporting the middle class and, not taxing the middle class and all these sort of things. And so it was, in my mind, I've always thought about, well, middle class, what is that? I don't know if you've ever thought that as well. In middle class here in New Bern, North Carolina, where I live, is vastly different from middle class where I grew up in Fairfax County, Virginia, one of the wealthiest counties in America. Now, wasn't that necessarily that way when I grew up, but it is right outside of Washington, D.C., and so that spigot of federal money just pours across the Potomac River into Fairfax County and made it one of the wealthiest counties out there today. Or where my wife is from, Atlanta, Georgia, the middle class in those two areas is vastly different than here in New Bern. And so when politicians refer to policies that support the middle class, I started thinking, what exactly does that mean? And fortunately, I found a study out there that will help us explain that. We're coming up on our second break here, so you want to make sure you come back and we'll talk about what exactly is the middle class in America. So for All Things Money, I'm David Blaine. We'll be right back.